Welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by some of my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos, the original 4-H's of gay podcasting, to discuss movies either current or classic. And this week we're coming at you with something entirely current. We are reviewing the last film in Marvel's Phase 4, that being Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. We've been waiting for this one to come out for a long time. Definitely looking forward to chatting all about this film. Before we get to that, though, definitely want to introduce you to my co-host for the evening. Hopefully we'll have co-hosts. Jim Pugliafico is having some technical difficulties. We're working on trying to get him in right now. But in the meantime, it may be just Will and I, unless he's able to join us. And that's okay. We'll miss Jim's voice. Fingers crossed that he will still be able to get in here with us. But William Lindis, how the hell are you?
Hey, doing great. Would be doing better if Jim was here. You know, it's we're always strongest when all three of our powers are combined. Like I don't know, like a very small version of Captain Planet or something. But you know, if Jim can't make it and it's just you and I talking movies today, Brad, I'm looking forward to that too.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good discussion, even though we're missing our Mati, our heart. Yeah. Hopefully he'll show up at the last minute and allow us to summon Captain Planet as we would otherwise normally do. But there's a lot to talk about this week with the new Black Panther film. For those of you who are listening live, we want to hear your thoughts. Feel free to avail yourself of that live chat as we're talking. Let us know what you thought of the movie, what worked well for you, what could have worked better. What did you think? Drop it in that chat. And if you're listening through the magic of digital tape delay on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc., we'd still love to hear your thoughts too. They won't quite be live while we're recording, but that's okay. Use the comment section on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, wherever you follow us. Let us know what you thought of this film. All of that said, though, Will, are you ready to talk some Black Panther?
I am, and I'm also super excited for our new little split screen format here. I feel like one of the talking heads on like CNN. Like we should just start arguing about some odd point all of a sudden.
Well, let me just go ahead and bring up the election wall, and we'll take a look at what happened in
No. This has nothing to do with 2022, Brad. Blah, 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 blah.
I don't know about in your house, but we've been watching CNN like crazy since the election last week. I feel like I've had enough to last me a lifetime at this point.
I'm all politicked out.
I know. My goodness. All right. Well, let's take our mind off politics and put it on movies. That's why we're here. That's what we're going to do. Here we go. Our discussion of Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. All right. So when it comes to all things comics, Will, I bow at the altar of your knowledge. You are our comic expert. I dabble. I read here and there. I watch comic book movies, but I don't have the same kind of body of knowledge that you do. So it'll be interesting to hear a lot of your thoughts this evening, I think, relative to when we're recording versus when you may be listening, folks. But Will, do us a favor. Introduce this movie briefly. I think most people know what the fuck this is. And just give us your initial spoiler-free thoughts. Of course, we'll give fair warning when spoilers are about to happen. But without ruining anyone's experience if they haven't been able to get out over the weekend, what you think?
First of all, Brad, thank you so much for introducing my body of knowledge. It's always appreciated when my body of knowledge is sort of like introduced to the world. So thank you for that. So Black Panther Wakanda Forever, like you mentioned, this is the end of phase 4 of the MCU. Means that the next set of films and shows that we have coming up are going to kick off the new cycle, phase 5, all of that. Hey, Jim's here.
I am here.
Yeah.
You joined us just in time. We can now summon Captain Planet, Earth, Fire,
Don't let me interrupt the flow.
No. It's this is good. This is good. So yeah, fourth film, the end of Phase 4, and the follow up film to 2018's Black Panther. Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, also directed by Ryan Coogler. Follows the characters that I would say were sort of the supporting leads of the Black Panther film. Queen Ramonda, Shuri, M'Baku, Okoye, Nakia, Everett Ross, some of these different characters from that film in the absence of T'Challa, Black Panther, who it's all over the marketing, and also we know it from real life. In both the character of T'Challa and the real life actor Chadwick Boseman have died, and so this film follows Wakanda as it one grieves, two struggles with what Wakanda is, sort of in this new Black Panther-less era of its political life cycle. And three, it has to deal with a new threat, a group of Telecan, which is basically like an underwater community of people led by Prince Namor, who have a lot in common, but also are very much at odds with Wakanda. So all of those things come to a head here in Wakanda Forever. I absolutely loved this movie. I thought this was such a well done film that I think had to do a lot of things at the same time. You have to balance the fact that this I'm sure the script for this film was probably under development as the first film back in 2018 was just making massive, just boatloads of money as people showed up in waves to see it. And you have to also believe that, Chadwick Boseman's passing derailed those plans, and you have to now come back and say, well, how do I tell a story absent the main character? And I think this film does a really good job of threading that needle. This is a this is a film where the T'Challa character is present in every scene, even though he's never on or not really on screen, right? You feel his loss, you feel his absence, but in his absence, the characters that do step up to the mantle, and we'll talk a little bit more about who those people are and why in spoilers, but the people that do step up to the mantle, both in the lead roles of the film, some of the new characters that are introduced, and some of the people that sort of take the mantle of kind of the protector and of this community forward. They do a really good job with it. I love the actors. I love the story. I love the way the themes weave so well together. This was just a fun movie, but it was also a very heartfelt movie. There were people crying all around me off of this movie, and I get it. It hits all those emotional levels the way it's supposed to. So this is a strong recommend for me. This movie had a lot to pull off, and it pulled it all off.
All right, excellent. Well, Will, thank you so much for sharing your initial thoughts on Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. We have a live listener in the chat with us, Ryan Rivera. Hey, Ryan. He says, I'm listening to the stream while cleaning and closing at my retail job. Glad I haven't missed you. Ryan, you are right on time, my friend. Welcome. Glad to see you here. Ryan has been around as a listener pretty much as long as we've been doing the podcast. So great to see you, Ryan.
Yeah, Ryan, I'm glad we can hang out with you tonight. It can sometimes suck to be sort of like at the tail end of like your shift, but glad we can hopefully make the time pass a little easier.
Indeed. All right. Jim, I believe you are up next to weigh in with your leanings on this movie. Will was really positive. Did you have the same experience as Will, or did it maybe fall a little shorter for you? Where'd you come down?
A little shorter. I was relatively so on this movie, and the way I'm looking at this movie is, as I'm watching it, it felt like Will, you said it had to do a lot of different things. The two main ones for me was, how is it going to handle the absence of Chadwick Boseman, right, as T'Challa, and how is it going to weave that into the story? And it did. The movie did several times, as you said. He's kind of always kind of in the back of our minds, sometimes in the forefront of our minds, depending on what this movie was doing. I loved the way it honored the character, and it kind of in parallel honoring the performer that was in the movie several times throughout the movie. And we'll get into some of those maybe, I'm sure, in spoilers. But I love those parts of the movie. I think this property, specifically the Black Panther property, does miss him based on kind of the retooled script that we got, which seemed kind of mushy to me. I know that not being a comic book guy, there were probably some things being happening in this film that this film was setting up that I was not quite on board with. Kind of what they were doing. I know that it introduces this whole new civilization, at least to me, that I thought was kind of cool. That they kind of brought this on and kind of created this conflict, that the conflict in this movie is not the conflict that you see brewing in the first movie, really. And that's not, I don't think that's too much of a spoiler. I think we get kind of a misdirect on the main thrust of the conflict of the movie, and I thought is pretty cloudy to me. I thought all the performances were great. I mean, Letitia Wright is fantastic in this, as well as all the other actors that are in here. I love that. I love the new face that we got in this film. I don't know the actor's name. God, Will, help me out here.
Which character are you talking about?
The actor from the other civilization, the main
Tina
character.
Huerta?
Yeah. I thought he was really good, refreshing to see, kind of a fresh face for, at least for me. I'm not sure. He has one of those faces that you're like, have I seen this guy in stuff before? Because he looks really familiar and he's really good. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit too. But yeah, I was generally so. I didn't think the story captured me as much as the the homage to Chadwick Boseman and the character of T'Challa. Maybe until the very end of the movie. Also, I just thought that this movie didn't look very good to me. It was weird for a Marvel film. It felt a little like mushy. Like it all looked a little muted is not the right word, but very defocused. I don't know if it was a projection problem, but it looked, a lot of it was really not well lit, I will say. At least from what I could see. I was thinking, like, oh boy, if people are gonna watch this at home later when it's streaming in their living room, if they don't have their TV settings exactly right, there's gonna be a lot of scenes that they're just not gonna get. Unfortunately, maybe it'll be different on a streaming platform than it was in the theaters. I don't know, but I thought cinematography wise, I thought this fell pretty far short of most other Marvel stuff for me. So there you go. So for me. Marvel heads and comic book folks are gonna flock to this movie. I would say see it strictly if you love Black Panther and want to see kind of the continuation of some of the characters and how they paid homage to the T'Challa character and Chadwick Boseman. But other than that, I didn't think there was much in this movie for me.
All right. Well, Jim, definitely appreciate you coming at us with your thoughts as well. For me, there were some things that I really loved and some things that I just really didn't jive with. And the end result for me wasn't overwhelmed, wasn't underwhelmed. I was just whelmed. And that's fine. Not every movie is going to knock your socks off. I just to kind of echo you guys a little bit, I really loved how they handled T'Challa's death and the absence of Chadwick Boseman. He was sorely missed. And I think all of that was handled very respectfully and very powerfully. Um, I do feel like this movie was very slow and plodding at times. And when I say that, in no way, just to be clear, am I referring to the slow moments when they're handling, themes like grief and loss, with regards to the T'Challa character. I think that stuff was just perfect and dead on. But I do think there's a couple albatrosses around the neck of this movie that take a lot of the runtime away from those themes of loss and grief and assuming the mantle of power and finding your way forward out of grief. And it's unfortunate. There is a character in this film who is here basically because that character is going to have a Disney Plus series that's coming out, needed to set up that Disney Plus series. There's a character in this movie who's had some appearances and other things, but she's here solely to set up a movie that's coming out in 2024. And unfortunately, the stuff with both of these characters, while maybe a little interesting in their own right, um, I don't know. It just pulls the focus away from the things that I really cared about and that I really wanted to spend that time with. That being, what's happening with the Black Panther character? Is there going to be another Black Panther? What happens with the royal family? And then the whole thing with the conflict with Namor and his people. So the things that I really liked definitely made me enjoy this film, but all the service that it's doing to set up other things in the MCU, I think is just a big detriment to this film. If you're going to give a character her own Disney Plus series, just give her own Disney Plus series. We don't need to take 45 minutes away from the main themes and the main happenings of this film to set that up. I don't know. It feels a little distracty and a little muddy. Jim, you mentioned the CGI and the visuals and all that stuff with this film. It's interesting. There were definitely some night scenes in the first Black Panther, but those felt a lot sharper. I think you used the term mushy. I would even say is how it kind of looked to me. Like there's scenes that happen at night here. There's scenes that happen underwater here. And I realize we're looking through water. It's got to look distorted. But I mean, there's just some choices with lighting and things that influence the ability to see what's going on. I was actually reminded a lot of some criticisms thrown at Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon with regards to only using the lighting that would naturally be in a scene to light it.
Candles in a castle at nighttime.
Right. Exactly. And I see some of that here. Like it's in the trailer. There's a scene that happens on a bridge and everything is only lit by the street lights on that bridge. You know what I mean? And so you're seeing a battle play out here, but it's actually a little hard to follow some of what's going on because the lighting isn't great. Anyway, it sounds like I'm maybe nitpicking a little bit, but I just feel like, especially for this to be the last film in Marvel's Phase 4, so many other films have come before this, including another Black Panther film. I'm just surprised to see some of that muddiness, that mutedness crop up in a film like this. I'm wondering how that came about. Was it a creative choice that just didn't play out very well on screen, or was it, Jim, you mentioned maybe it being a projection issue, but I'll tell you, a lot of people on Reddit had the same issues we did. And Reddit is where I go to try and confirm some of these things. So I don't think it was just our screening. At the end of the day, though, this was a good movie. I enjoyed it. I don't know that this is going to have a lot of rewatchability for me, if I'm being honest, compared to some of the other Marvel films, including the first Black Panther. But I mean, it was fine. It was fine. So if you are a fan of Marvel films, I'm sure you'll find something to enjoy here. But I'm not going to sit here and say that it's a perfect movie because I don't think that it is.
And there's no such thing as a perfect movie either, too. And I think that's, that's one of those things, too, that I think is, kind of comes into play, too. Like the first film was pretty darn close to it, minus some rough, I would rough CGI in the final fight of the first Black Panther, I think, was the biggest thing holding it back, right? I had a better experience with the projection on mine, at least. Like it looked really good on my screen, but I really, really, really enjoyed seeing all of these different characters with very, very different points of view, but that are all informed by some of the same things, right? We have two stories of basically the impacts of like colonialism, like hitting at the exact same time, and these two cultures sort of pitted against each other by a world culture that has sort of forced them to pit against each other, and that was interesting for me to see. Jim, you mentioned you were very interested in the Tino Huerta, the Namor actor. It's like he's
Yeah,
one of
I
those
know now where I was looking it up.
Tigers are not afraid.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Sin Nombre, by the way, which I saw,
Oh
which
yeah.
which I really love. But yeah, he was in Tigers Are Not Afraid, and
Yeah,
that's where I'm sure that's where his face recognition comes from for me.
Yeah. I appreciate so much that everyone got their hand on the ball a little bit here. We got to see a lot more of Michaela Cole here. She is just, I mean, she's an absolute treasure. I mean, you may have seen her in like Chewing Gum or I May Destroy You, which is like one of the best TV shows of the last few years. She played Annika, which was the other Dora Milaje that we kind of follow outside of the Okoye character. Well, she had knives. That's if yeah, that actress. She's just one of the best people working right now, just in general, and it was really nice to see her here. I did have a much more positive experience, I would say, with the Riri character. I mean, she's she's in the trailers and she's in stories and stuff like that. I really like Dominique Thorne, and I like that this actress, her role got to be, Black Panther is more than just a story about a superhero. It's a story about like the entire like Black diaspora, right? And I think being able to see a representation of a character who is not part of Wakandan culture but is able to thrive when visiting Wakanda, I think is interesting to me. And I think that's why I like seeing this character here as opposed to just waiting for her show, right? Some of the I will concede though some of the government agent stuff we'll say was probably like that you could have cut a little bit of that out. I don't disagree with that at all. I think that part was probably the least compelling in terms of the stuff that's happening here.
Yeah, well, a couple of things you mentioned that I really want to get into in spoilers. One is kind of this whole government. I think that's a remnant from the first movie, though. Hold on. To me, it felt like a remnant of the first movie that didn't need to be necessarily in this movie. Other than that opening scene, I don't think it needed to be in this movie. It didn't lend anything for me, but from what I understand, and comic book people will tell me, there's some tie-in to something else that either may be coming or that's kind of an ancillary part of this world that I didn't fully understand. And that's, again, I don't like when movies would do that because it leaves viewers like me in the dust saying this is crap. This part is crap. It doesn't really lend to my enjoyment of the movie. The other thing I want to talk about in spoilers when we get there is the central conflict between two civilizations. What drives it, how it's resolved, how we feel during it. Like I'm dying to get into some of that because I had some strange, not strange, but unusual vibes from some of that stuff. So,
well, we've gotten our initial thoughts out at this point, and I think most people who are probably listening have already seen the movie. So I feel like this is probably a natural point to go ahead and make that bridge over to spoilers. Jim, Will, are you both on board?
Yeah, let's do the thing.
Let's go.
All right. Then here we go. The part of the show where we spoil the hell out of the plot of the film that we're reviewing for the week. Of course, that being Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. This is your chance if you haven't seen the movie yet, assuming you care about having your experience preserved for you. Go ahead and step away. Come back in about 20 minutes and we'll be rocking out some plugs for you. We want to put some things on your radar. Or, skip ahead if you're listening to a digital tape delay, use the time index in the show notes and just jump right ahead to plugs. Go for it. By the time you're listening to this, that'll all be in place for you. All right. All of that said, spoilers for Black Panther are fair game in 3, 2, 1. All right. So, Jim, you wanted to talk about the central conflict in this movie between the two civilizations. Tell us a little bit more about your thoughts there and maybe what you wanted to discuss.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool because, the movie kind of introduces us to this before unbeknownst civilization, and they give them kind of an origin story. Please help me out with the names of the world or the undersea realm that they lived in, or the nation. I forget what they called it in the movie. But it was more like and you're going to have to help me out with my cultural insensitivities here, like
You're talking about the
are
Talokan
they
people?
Mayan? Are they Mayan?
Sort of like Mesoamerican would be, kind of the best,
Mesoamerican.
They weren't
culture.
exactly Mayan, but yeah.
Did they? Yeah, it's a fictional world, right? So it's a fictional civilization, but it's kind of based on kind of a Mesoamerican society, and that was really cool to see. I really like that part. And of course, because the genie gets out of the genie, which is the discovery of vibranium, kind of is the genie that's let out of the bottle, that you kind of can't put back in. You have these two civilizations that are set up to conflict over the vibranium and the use of it and so forth. But in the end, it seems like one civilization had to yield to the other in order to resolve the conflict. And I found that really odd that there was a way that, like, basically one civilization had to take dominion over the other one for them to work together. They couldn't find another way to kind of resolve that conflict. And that was really weird. It felt really strange.
Yeah, it's a
That they
bizarre
couldn't resolve
setup.
it in a more positive way. I sense there's trouble down the road for these two civilizations, obviously, right? Especially since one is going to maybe a little bit secondary to the other one, maybe. But definitely one civilization had to act. I mean, the words "I yield," basically he was speaking for his people. His people yield to Wakanda, and to so is it new Black Panther now? Is that what we're calling her?
Yeah, she's Black Panther. Yeah,
she is Black Panther now, right? Yeah. So
it's a really weird setup with this conflict because Namor tells us that he wants to protect his people and he wants to make sure that they're never found out about, because then the world is going to like come after them and try and attack them and take what they have. Yet their plan is to get Wakanda to be a partner with them and preemptively attack the nations of the world to like prevent that from happening. Okay. I don't know that I entirely get that reasoning, but if you tell me that's what it is, okay. And at the end of the movie, we have this fight between Black Panther and Namor, and outside of her being stabbed through the gut, she doesn't have invulnerability, but she can still flip around. That's cool. But they basically enter into this agreement where Wakanda is going to protect the oceans and help protect the world from finding out about them, and Wakanda is going to ensure that like nobody fucks with them. So I don't know that Namor's civilization is necessarily like being secondary to them or subservient to them. It's not like the Talokan people are coming to like build cities for them or anything, but Wakanda has just agreed for the I guess positive influence on the world to run interference and keep them happy rather than having this giant war.
It ends
Right.
up being a dependent situation, kind of, right?
Uh,
They I guess they're dependent upon each other.
Right.
In a
Because
way.
I mean, both cultures have. I mean, this is what's interesting about this is they're not fighting over a resource, right? They both independently have access to their own stores of the same resource, right? And I appreciated that it wasn't a fight for vibranium like that.
Right.
I think
No, it was.
that's probably the easiest thing to have done, right? Instead,
But the
this was
existence of vibranium is the thrust of the conflict.
the existence of
The threat of
vibranium
the
is
existence of vibranium.
the threat that puts the two of them in sort of like it's sort of like I'm going to use a survivor analogy for you guys. You know
Yeah.
how sometimes one of the strategies to keeping yourself when you know that you're a big target is to keep another big target in the game. I think there is a
Meat
little bit
shield.
of that I think that Talocan is doing with Wakanda, which is sort of keeping them as a meat shield against the global politics, right? What they tried to do here is essentially like, hey, go attack these guys for us, and if you don't, we'll strong arm you. And I think that there's something savvy about that, right? Like, hey, I want you guys to take on the world powers, and we'll just kind of be back here, kind of playing things out. It didn't work for the Taliban, but
Well, and they fucked it up for themselves, though. That's one of the weirdest things about this movie. Namor is basically like, "Hey, go get this scientist who has made this machine that can detect vibranium and thus detect us, and spirit her away so that nobody, can use her machine. They can't use her smarts." And that's exactly what the Queen does. She sends folks in to get Riri, and then Namor sends a team of people up onto the bridge to have a big fight. And the whole point was they didn't want to expose their people to the world yet. They don't want anybody to know about them. They want Wakanda to basically take this on for them. So like, why the fuck would they do that? It makes no sense.
I think one of Namor's big traits is his arrogance, right? This is a guy who thinks that he can sort of boss his way through getting like, all of his angles covered. And I think, that's the one thing, like, and I will say to something you'd said earlier, Jim, there's fortunately not a ton of like, you have to know this from the comics to know this about this movie. Like,
No.
mostly everything here, like there's definitely some things that are like, that play off from stuff in the comics, but it all I think more exists within movie universe. But the one thing I think that they really had to nail was this had to be a leader. This had to be a Namor who was arrogant and had some pompousness to him, but also who we could see how he could see he's right. Namor in the comics has often been an antagonist character, but he's always done so in what he would consider like the defense of his people or the defense of like the oceans and stuff like that. And I think they captured that, and I'm glad that they captured that, because that was the thing that they had to most pull off. And I'm glad that they did they restructured, like, this, in the comics it's Atlantis, and it's not Talocan, it's not Mesoamerican. They adapted that for the movie, and I think it's richer for it. I think the movie is richer for that decision.
Yeah, I definitely like that society and that world, and you could sense that they had been. I mean, I believe that they had been kind of living to their, keeping to themselves. I don't know how much world awareness they had prior to the events of this movie when they attacked the American, exploration ship or operation. I don't know if they even knew about any other civilizations, Wakandan or American. It's interesting. We have Wakanda and we have the Talocan. Is that it?
Yeah.
Civilizations, and then we have America. It seems to be like we only have these three parts of the world.
Well, France made a gambit at the beginning of the movie, and it didn't work out for them.
Yeah. Were they the ones who invaded the
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Yeah, France was the country that
France.
did they basically tried to steal some Wakandan vibranium, and they brought them into UN, or just kind of like next time it's war.
Yeah.
And I actually appreciated that too. Like I think it could have just been like, like you said, just sort of like have the US in that role. I think you could have very easily done that, but by just showing it as another world power, I think it sort of sets up like, okay, yeah, Wakanda is not just like at odds with like this one government agent. Like there's a lot of government agents like in a lot of different countries who are all kind of like sharpening their knives and just sort of looking like, okay, they're vulnerable. There's no Black Panther. When do we pounce?
Yeah. Did you want to talk about the other stuff, that the Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Martin Freeman portion of this movie, which
We can. So it's all a setup for the Thunderbolts, which is basically, if I understand correctly, based on some of the research I've been doing, because my knowledge on the Marvel side is not so great. They're basically Marvel's answer to the Suicide Squad, right? Well, so they're led by Agent Valentina, whatever the rest of her last name is, and it's setting up a movie that's going to have David Harbour back as Red Guardian. It's going to have Black Widow's sister back, and some other folks. I didn't finish Falcon and Winter Soldier, but my understanding is U.S. agent from that show is coming back to be part of that team. So it's basically just setting her up as the Amanda Waller of this universe.
Yeah. That's
so
exactly
that
right.
whole storyline was kind of a deep cut on Marvel Comics, right, for this movie. Like, I mean, I had no idea like what it was.
I would say this more than anything, that I don't think it was a deep cut on Marvel Comics, because the character they're adapting from Marvel Comics did something very different. What this more is this is world building within the MCU, right? Because this character, we've seen her now 4 or 5 times, either showing up at the end of movies or showing up at the end of shows, like talking to different characters, just sort of like, oh, so it's really just sort of like a continuity for her. So I would think of it less as like you have to know the comics, and more just, it's sort of like we keep seeing her popping up in the shows and in the movies. So that's, like, what is she doing right now? And Brad, yeah, to your point, like it's sort of like Thunderbolts is sort of like Suicide Squad, but minus the threat of explosive violence. Like it's a group usually of like super villains gone good, but under government control. But they want to be there more than anything else.
That stuff felt like it could have been like Marvel would normally put that stuff in a mid or post credit scene to set something up for a later movie, not necessarily within the main thrust of a movie that's mainly about the conflict between two burgeoning and powerful civilizations. But I don't know. I think because this movie had other things on its mind for and we'll talk about the mid-credit scene in this movie. There was no end credit scene. I don't think for this movie. So we bolted out of the movie theater, and everyone's looking at us like, what are you leaving for? I'm like, after the mid-credit scene.
Jim's holding up his phone. He's like, I checked the app. There's no after credits scene.
I did not hold up my phone in the movie theater. But,
monster.
Yeah, I know. No, I did walk. I mean, the house lights were kind of up, but yeah. Do we want to talk also about kind of the homage scenes where they, do we want to talk about that? We definitely want to talk about that mid-credit scene as a spoiler.
We have 5 minutes and 28 seconds, so we can talk about whatever you want within that time frame.
Jim, okay, so what you want to talk about?
Yeah. So in the mid-credit scene, we learn that T'Challa has had a son, right?
Mm-hmm.
Living in, is it
Haiti,
Port-au-Prince, or Cape Verde? I forget where it was, but living with who is the character he lives with? His mother?
Nakia.
Nakia is his mother, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so apparently we have we have the Black Panther now, who is Shuri, right?
Mhm.
And now we have perhaps another heir, maybe further down the line to the Black Panther. Is that the way you guys see it?
Potentially.
Possibly. I don't know what route they're
Yeah.
going to go with, Shuri being the Black Panther now. Before it was this thing that was like passed down from like king to prince, who then becomes king, but that's all broken now.
Yeah.
We don't even know who the king of Wakanda is at this point.
Yeah.
Because Shuri didn't show up for her coronation thing, and M'Baku challenged, but who is he challenging? I have no fucking idea.
M'Baku can challenge me to a wrestling match.
Well, I would love to wrestle with him too, and I'd probably win. But no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I'm very confused at this point. Like, if Shuri is not taking the queen role, does that mean that T'Challa, son of T'Challa, is going to take the king role?
Well, that part, we'll have to see how that plays out, because ultimately, like, if at this point, Nakia and Toussaint, T'Challa, are in Haiti. They're doing their own thing right now, and there's no indication that they're planning on doing anything differently, right? So I would not be surprised if we come back in the next movie or the next time Wakanda appears and like M'Baku is sitting on the throne, because and that's sort of like the power shift that's happened, or maybe it does set up some down the line. I think there's the nice thing is that it sets up story potential, right? We have a lot of things there. I do want to flag that I love his, like, the name that they gave him, right? I think that was pretty neat, so his name is, of course, T'Challa, but also it's Toussaint, which is
like Tucson.
Tucson.
Everybody in our theater went crazy. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, I was about to say, yeah. So he's named after, there's like a Haitian revolutionary from like the 18th century who did some uprisings, and that's the name, and so that's why Shuri said that name has a lot of like. I forget what she said, something like, oh, that name has a lot of weight or something like that. I thought that was just cool. That seems like a very T'Challa thing to name.
Yeah. It was a surprising and I think very touching scene. I think that's where a lot of the waterworks started for a lot of people, I think. For me though, I thought it was really touching what they did right up front with the Marvel title sequence.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I thought that was awesome the way they did that. Kind of as right up front, the movie's letting you know that Chadwick Boseman is missed, and that was a really nice tribute, I thought, in front of this movie. Yes. For a minute, I thought it was going to be all we got, but then we got a lot more. We got a whole like memorial scene, and then we got that scene at the end. So yeah, that was great. We didn't get to see him when Shuri went to the she went to the spirit world, right? At one point to meet her ancestors that came before her.
She saw Killmonger.
Yes.
And then she saw her mother. And then she saw her mother.
Right. So she didn't get to see T'Challa.
Correct.
Which I think we were all maybe kind of hoping that they would figure something. They would probably do a CGI thing.
I was so glad they didn't.
Yes.
And I didn't think they would. I think that would have been cheap to like reuse footage, that maybe wasn't in the last movie, to like try and force some kind of, conversation. I'm glad they didn't go.
Especially for a movie that was so much about the absence of the character, right? They got away with it in like the Fast and Furious 97 with Paul Walker, or whichever movie it was. So that's 7, 8, one of them. Because the movie wasn't about the loss of that character. This was about the loss. So I'm glad that we didn't get that convenient closure of that. Shuri didn't get that convenient closure. She still has to sort of live like with the absence, but that's what grief is. We have to live with those things.
Right.
This movie started with that amazing ceremony. Like, it just looked beautiful. It looked wonderful. Like it looked, just everyone in white, and just like it was like a celebration. Despite like the grief that Shuri was very obviously going through, the people of Wakanda were celebrating um, T'Challa. They were grieving his death, but they were also celebrating his life, and I thought that was very moving. And the very end of the movie did something that I don't see a lot from movies like this. Not just Marvel movies, but like blockbuster movies or whatever. The end of the film felt like, so it's before it cuts to credits, it's Shuri sitting there on the on the beach, and like there's just sort of like the sun kind of filtered over her, and she's sort of processing everything as the music fades in, and it's like it's more of a somber tone. It had the ending of like, honestly, like an A24, like indie-ish type film. It didn't end with a bang. It ended on a moment of like quiet reflection. And I thought that was really that was a really strong choice. And it looked gorgeous too, as the sun kind of like washed over her face, sort of silhouetting part of it. It was such a good shot.
Agreed. All right, fellas. Well, we have talked about this movie quite a bit. I feel like we could probably talk about it for another hour and a half. But I know we have some plugs that we want to get to, things we want to put on people's radars. Before we do that, though, I would be remiss if I didn't offer one last chance. Any other thoughts on Black Panther Wakanda Forever before we move on?
None for me.
Yeah,
Well,
no, I'm good too. I think we got it.
All right. Awesome. Well, then we're going to make that transition to our plugs section. This is the part of the show where we put things that we love, that we're interested in, hopefully on your radar so that you can check these things out. Sometimes they're indie movies. Sometimes they're a new album that came out from an artist we love. Sometimes it's a beloved book. Whatever it is, it's something that's near and dear to our hearts that we want to become near and dear to you. Real quick though, guys, Cisco Salgado is here. Cisco, oh my gosh.
Hey,
Cisco! Oh my God.
He says, just caught my favorite huggable homos live. Heart ons and hugs. Got a big heart on right here for you, Cisco.
got a triple heart on for you too.
So good to see you, Cisco. It's great to see some of the names and faces from the past bubble up here as we do our thing. Thanks for being here and supporting the show. Plugs are officially happening right now, and let's start with Jim. Jim, what is something that you adore and you want other people to check out?
Well, I checked out a movie in the theaters that's fairly new. That's called The Banshees of Inisherin. Will, I'm sorry if I stole your plug.
No.
Maybe you thought I would plug this anyway. That I went to see in the theaters. It's written and directed by Martin McDonagh, who gave us In Bruges several years ago, with the same two actors, Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson. This movie is just about two friends who all of a sudden, one of them abruptly decides he doesn't want to be friends anymore. And the whole thing is a mystery. It's it's not a comedy, but it does have some really dark humor until it doesn't, and then it becomes like really crazy serious and solemn and introspective. I really love this movie. I think this movie is going to get a lot of attention toward the end of the year. This movie reminded me of less of In Bruges and more of another movie directed by a McDonagh, but a John McDonagh, which is Martin's brother, called Calvary, that we saw several years ago. Babe, you remember seeing Calvary with Brendan Gleeson?
Loved that movie. It was so
This movie reminded me a lot more of Calvary. Kind of the setting was very similar, kind of on this Irish, this island in Ireland. Just, man, the performances here, there's only a few main actors in here. I mentioned Colin Farrell, Brendan Gleeson, who are both great. I mean, Colin Farrell in the past has been hot or cold for me, but I think here he's really, really good. Barry Keoghan is in this one. We've seen him in a lot of stuff. The Green Knight, most recently, Killing of a Sacred Deer. We've seen him in a few other things. And Kerry Condon, who's great in this movie. Basically, 4 main characters and some side characters. But it's called The Banshees of Inisherin. It's a strange title. It's only in theaters right now. It is in semi-wide release. It's not just in art house theaters. It's in some mainstream theaters if you look for it. It'll probably be streaming later this year, maybe. But yeah, I would check it out. I really love this movie. It almost feels like a fable or an allegory to me, and that was great.
I've been loving the legs of this one because it's been, I think this is its third week out or something along those lines. It's it's building a little bit of buzz. Even to the point where Scott, my fiance, this last week said, "Hey, is that Banshees movie still in theater?" I'm like, yeah. He's like, "Can we go see it this weekend?" Absolutely. So we've got tickets to go see it on Saturday.
Oh, great. Great.
So I've seen it before. Scott hasn't seen it yet, but when he said, "Are you okay with seeing this one again?" I was like, "Oh, hell yes. Hell yes."
Well, I'd be interested in hearing what you think, second time through.
Yeah, it will be interesting to, it's always fun to sort of like revisit a thing, right?
Right. Cool.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks so much, Jim, for your plug this week. Will, what have you got?
Yeah, so mine is a film that's coming out this Friday that I want to put on people's radar. It is a movie called The Menu, and it's really good. It's really good, actually. The idea behind it is you've got this young couple, Nicholas Holt and Anya Taylor-Joy, are invited to this like remote island, and on that island, it's all of these foodies, food critics, people that do like food tours, things along those lines, are invited to this like Michelin star chef, played by Ralph Fiennes, and for a bespoke experience. Everything made from the island and crafted just for that one meal. And this is one of those movies where if you think you know where this movie is going from the trailer, you don't, and that's exciting for me. It's fun to watch a movie that that is interested in sort of shifting up kind of like what genre it even is. Like, again, I would be hard pressed to say, well, it's kind of a this or it's kind of a that, it's kind of this. For the purposes of this, though, this is a movie that is sharply satirical. It has some horror adjacent elements, but it is not a horror movie. I don't know. It's a surprisingly good movie. I've been seeing the trailers before seeing it, and went into it thinking like, yeah, this will be fine. I'm excited, and I came out of it going like, holy shit, this was like the trailers are intentionally holding a lot back because they need to, because of the type of movie it is. So yeah, I strongly recommend The Menu. It's a really, really, really good film.
Yeah, Will, you mentioned movies that kind of give you a trailer and you think you know what you're going into, but you don't. I haven't seen this one yet, so I don't know, but I'm anxious to see it. But it reminds me of Barbarian, like the way you described. Like you think you know what the movie's going to be, and then it's something totally different.
Right. And I think there's something so satisfying about, I feel like maybe, I don't know, 5 to 8 years ago, there was this trend in trailers, which was to just show the movie, but abbreviated.
It still happens.
It still happens, but I'm starting to see smarter editing in trailers, at least for certain types of films. I want that trend to continue. I want movies that surprise me again. So trailer editors, a little goes a long way.
Okay, cool. Babe, what do you got?
I have an animated series on Netflix that I have been watching recently. I started watching this when it first came out, like 5 years ago. Finished the first season really loved it, and then never heard anything about season 2, never heard anything about season 3, never heard anything about season 4. I honestly thought this show had been like canceled and just not continued until I was thumbing through Netflix and I saw season 4 of The Dragon Prince has now dropped. And I'm like, what? Season 4? Oh, okay. This is a series that is by some of the same folks who brought us Avatar: The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra. Really, really great animation style. I love the artwork. The voice cast is incredible. They're wonderful on so many levels. But I think this show just isn't getting enough buzz. Not enough people know about it. It is definitely a high fantasy show. There's humans, there's elves, there's 20
Dragons.
different kinds of elves. There's dragons, there's griffins, there's all kinds of cool stuff in this show. I don't want to give the story of the show away, except to say that, like, the king of the dragons dies. Premise of the show, and his succession all relies on this dragon prince. It's an egg, hatches into a dragon, and it's the most adorable baby dragon you'll ever see in your whole life. He's just, oh my god, I need a plush of that
Is he
dragon.
still a baby, or can
He
you
is.
not tell me?
I don't want to give spoilers. He's still a very young dragon. By this point where we are in the series. But what's interesting is the series actually took a couple years off because of COVID, as many things did. And when it came back for season 4, it actually rebranded itself as The Dragon Prince: The Mystery of Erebos. Um, and the reason I mention that is if you go to Netflix and you look for The Dragon Prince, you will find it. But it's just The Dragon Prince in tiny, tiny little letters on the thumbnail, and then The Mystery of Erebos in giant letters. So it's super easy to miss if you're not looking for it. But season 4 of The Dragon Prince is out right now. It just came out last week. For folks who are like, man, we just don't get enough original IPs these days. Everything's a rehash or remake or a sequel or whatever. This is an original property. It's really fucking fun. It is a show that is made for kids, but holy shit, does it get dark? And I'm totally here for it. So check it out on Netflix, The Dragon Prince.
Yeah, the little bits and pieces that I've seen of it. I'm not watching along with you, of course, but looks really cool. Like you had mentioned that it has a lot of bones or people involved that were involved in Avatar: The Last Airbender animated series, which is a classic, right? And a lot of people love that. This one looks like it's a notch above that at least in terms of like visual style. And I don't know about themes, but sounds like it's pretty awesome.
Brad, I'm going to send you a TikTok after the show of this thing that I saw earlier. It's this guy who was a weaponsmith, like in real life, like that's what he does.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the creators of the show basically gave him like a bunch of money and a bunch of hours just to make. And I haven't watched the show, but apparently one of the characters has this like sort of like almost like two switchblade like knives things, and so he said it took him like over 100 hours to make, but he made those in real life. And they look amazing. So I'll send that to you because it looks cool as fuck.
I can't wait to see that. The character that uses those swords, her name is Rayla, and she's amazing with him. But I thought, that's totally unrealistic. Weapons like that couldn't exist, and now apparently they do. So there you go.
Well, I think you just planted a Christmas gift idea in Brad's head.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need double switchblade swords that I can pull from behind my back.
Well, yeah.
Bespoke double switchblade swords that I can pay someone to make over the course of 100 hours.
There we go.
That's what keeps you safe, Jim, from having those in the house is like you have to find yourself a weaponsmith on TikTok. But hey,
we've got plenty of swords in the house, although I don't think any of them would actually kill anybody. They're all replica kind of things. Yeah.
All right. Well, Jim, Will, this was a super fun show. We always have a good time when we do this. A couple things I wanted to call out. It is November 15th relative to when you're listening. That's when we're recording, which means, you guys, we have just 1 month until our 10-year anniversary. What?
The pressure.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I don't know that we'll
And
do anything zany or super out there. We may just, pick a super fun movie and, have a conversation. But I don't know. It's just one of those things. Like I was looking at, Ryan Rivera's name earlier popped
Yeah.
up, and then Cisco Salgado, who's also listened for God ages. And I just
Uh-huh.
think about, all the people that we have met along the way, Adrian Charlie and Bill, and just so many great
yeah.
connections have been made because of this podcast. I just find myself looking forward to that 10-year anniversary show. So
Yeah.
cannot wait.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one, and because it's comes on the heel of 455 fun ones, or 450, however many fun ones. Yeah, I'm excited for it.
Yeah. Yep. For sure. The other thing we want to call out is next week is the Thanksgiving holiday. Of course, we will be back with you next week, but we are going to be doing a special double episode. And these are going to be a couple movies that you can see over the Thanksgiving break if you're here in the United States and celebrate Thanksgiving. If you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, then it's just whatever the dates of that weekend happens to be. But we have two films coming at you. Strange World from Disney is going to be one of those. And then, Will, I know you're very excited to talk about the second movie. Tell us what that's going to be.
Yeah, the other one's going to be Bones and All. We're big fans here of Luca Guadagnino. You remember the famous peach that he brought to us, right? He's the director of he's the director of Call Me by Your Name, and so this is the and also Suspiria. Bones and All is his new movie, also starring Timothy Chalamet. Looking forward to chatting about that one with y'all.
Yeah, so you've got a little time. Of course, Strange World comes out over the Thanksgiving weekend, and then Bones and All, I think, is in limited release until the 23rd. And then that
Yeah,
opens wide.
that's right.
Yeah. So definitely be sure to see those two over the Thanksgiving weekend, so you can get ready for the show. Be part of that conversation. Jim, if people want to chat with you between now and our next recording, where can they do so?
Oh, you can still find me over on Twitter. Believe it or not, I'm one of the people that are still there at my handle, which is at JJP Out West. I wish there was more movie talk going on over there and less election, political, and the death, the raging dumpster fire that is Twitter itself on Twitter. But that's the way things are right now. So you can find me there, and then you can also find me under my name at Jim Pugliafico. But whichever platform you find me at, we will have a nice conversation if you want.
All right. Thank you so much. Will, how about you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Whatever Cove. I'm on Facebook, William Lindis. Just send me a message first that I know that you're a real human being. You can also search for me by name on Letterboxd, a site for ranking and reviewing films. And as mentioned, I'm on TikTok. I'm at the Movie Bear there.
All right, excellent. And folks, you can find me on Facebook. Just look for Brad Harris. I'm the one that probably has Bear, Chubb, Chaser, etc. friends in common with you. You can also find me on Twitter at iBradO and under the same name on Letterboxd. It's been a treat coming at you this week. Thanks so much to everybody who tuned in and was part of the live chat. And again, we'd love to hear your thoughts on Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. If you weren't part of the live show, drop those thoughts in the comments on Facebook, wherever you follow us and interact with us. We want to hear from you. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care. We will see you all next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.